Hey friends, this is Whiskey and Whit. I'm Whitney, and in today's video, we are taking a ton of inspiration from the new arrivals at Kirkland's for spring and Easter, but we're gonna make them over for a lot cheaper, so stay tuned. I did these Kirkland's inspired videos starting last fall, and I also did one for Christmas, and they are a ton of fun. I get to peruse the Kirkland's website, see what they have, and figure out how I can recreate some of those looks for much, much cheaper. A lot of times you'll see DIYs where you could buy it for 15 bucks and you can make it for 60, but this is not the case here. We're gonna dupe these looks for much cheaper, so let's get into it. Project one is this carrots and greenery wreath. So this starts with a grapevine wreath and some boxwood picks. The picks are from Walmart and the wreath is from Dollar Tree. I originally wanted to use a traditional wreath form, but this worked out much, much better. So I just started by taking my miter shears and cutting out the little pieces of boxwood. I started with some floral tape and that was an epic fail. So I ended up changing about 3 pieces in to tying it on with jute twine. This was much easier to work with for me. I am not a huge fan of floral tape. I was struggling. And also it really ties in with the grapevine wreath because that is tied with jute twine as well. So I went in and added my different little sprigs. I added some to the inside, some to the outside, and then layered some over the top. And I continued to cut through all of my boxwood picks until I completed the wreath. I needed 7 picks total for the wreath. So to create this boxwood wreath, it's a $1 wreath form and 7 picks, which are 97 cents at Walmart. So you are looking at under 10 bucks for a boxwood wreath. So that's a great DIY year round. I went through and just added a couple little dabs of hot glue if there were any pieces that were being kind of wonky, and then I used hot glue to insert all of the carrots. Now the trick here is to make this look 3-dimensional and not look so flat or that you just put the carrots on the outside. So I used 3 packs of Dollar Tree carrots with some hot glue and put some on the top as well as tucking in some as you see here so that it gave it a really dimensional look. And that's it. It's a super easy process. I have never made a boxwood wreath before in general, but this was really easy. It took me about 20 minutes start to finish, and it's very, very affordable. It's a project you could do if you're a beginner or if you're a seasoned crafter. As long as you could tie a knot and use some hot glue, you're good to go. I also love that this goes really well with this sign I made in a recent Dollar Tree Cricut blank video, so I'll link that down below for you as well if you're interested. So like I said, let's price check me. Their wreath looks like this, and it was $39.99, so 40 bucks, and mine was $12 all in. So that is almost 25% of their price. Can't beat that. Up next are these really fun bunny ear napkin holders, and they start with some shower curtain rings from Dollar Tree. So you only need 4, but it comes in a pack of 12, so you could make a ton of these if you've got a big shindig or you just want it for a big family, etc. So I started by hooking all of the shower curtain rings and then using some hot glue to get my jute twine started. This is just regular Dollar Tree jute twine, and I started wrapping it around the outside. I found it worked better to work in small chunks and using a little bit of hot glue as I went. Here's what they looked like. Then it was time to make my ears. So I ended up just freehanding it, but you could easily print out a printable for rabbit ears. I just, like I said, decided to freehand it. So I used my Arteza hobby knife, which I will link down below. I love using this thing when I use foam board from Dollar Tree. I cut out 8 ears like that, and then it was time to cover them in burlap. So this is burlap from Hobby Lobby, but you could absolutely use Dollar Tree's burlap ribbon, so I'm just gonna assume that's what this was. My store just didn't have any, so that's a good alternative. You could also get these on sale for $3 a roll at Hobby Lobby, which is awesome. Then I just added some Mod Podge to both sides and glued on the burlap. I found it was a lot easier to stick it all to one sheet, stick the other side like I'm doing here, and then cut them apart, just so I wasn't working with really small pieces of burlap. It seemed, working in a larger chunk was a lot easier. So I trimmed the outside of all of the ears, and then to finish off the look, I just added some hot glue to the little ends there that were white and added just a little bit of piping, essentially, of jute twine. Then I finished off this project by adding some hot glue to the bottom of each of the ears and glued them onto each of the rings. And here is what the final product looked like. I like that the white is peeking out a little bit, but it's not super, super white, and it doesn't look like you cut up some poster board. This looks so cute on my new napkins I bought from Hobby Lobby and will be great for Easter. So price check, for 4 of them from Kirkland's, it was $15.99, and for 4 of them with my Dollar Tree supplies, they were $6. Another item perfect for your spring and Easter table is this chalkboard bunny place card sign. Now keep in mind they are charging $10 for one of these. We can DIY for much cheaper. So we're gonna start with these Dollar Tree little ceramic bunnies. And as you can see here, you can easily pull it out by hand. So I started by painting the whole thing with elephant gray chalk paint, which is Waverly. And I wanted to make sure that I got everything covered, but you don't want to schlep it on so that you've got chunks of paint that are drying. You want to make sure everything is evenly spread out and not clumpy or too much paint anywhere. So once that's all painted, I grabbed some Vaseline or petroleum jelly and just used my finger to add it to some of the areas where you would think would naturally age. So the ears, the face, the arms. And then right over the top of that Vaseline, you're gonna add a thin coat of white paint. I'm using Waverly chalk paint here. You guys know it's my favorite. It's everybody's favorite. But once you give them a light coat, here's what it's gonna look like. And the reason you put the Vaseline on is it's going to help it chip in larger chunks when we distress it. And that's the look we're going for based on the inspiration. I went through and lightly sanded the areas, especially where I put that Vaseline. So as you can see, things are coming off in chunks and it looks a lot more weathered and old versus it just being like a distressed sign or having the edges be distressed. So that's why I did the Vaseline. And then the final step was to add our little nameplates. So I just took these 6-inch Dollar Tree wood dowels, used my miter shears and cut them in half so they were a little bit shorter to be proportionate to our bunnies. And then these little chalkboard clips, I just popped off the back, which was just a little clothespin. I added some hot glue back where the clothespins were and added my little sticks. And then to hook the sign to the bunny, the place that made the most sense was in between the ears there. So I added some glue there and then just stuck on my sign and it stayed really well. Then to personalize them, I just used a Dollar Tree chalk marker and I decided that it was a lot smarter to write the names and then stick them on, so that's what I decided to do. So here are our final little bunnies. I love that they all look just a little bit different and they don't look all matchy-matchy, especially with the distressing. They look really cute with my little setup for Easter here. I've got one for everybody in the family and these erase pretty easily too. So as a reminder, Kirkland's was $10 for one of these. I made a set of 4 of them for $6, so win-win-win. Our next inspo is this buffalo check tabletop sign, and I originally was drawn to it because of the buffalo check, but I ended up taking it in a different direction. So the bunny piece, I saw this in a store and thought specifically of this sign, and it's this spaced out sign. I actually used this in the fall to create a pumpkin, and I loved how easy it was to work with, so I decided to do it again. So step 1 is to prep your sign, get off any little stickers, as well as the front piece. It comes off pretty easily. Then we're going to create our letters. So I'm just using some foam board that I had left over from a previous project, but you could absolutely get a brand new sheet. It's just $1, and I'm including that in the pricing for everything that I'm doing, even though I used 1 sheet of poster board across the video. So I'm using a level to create my letters. H and P are pretty blocky, so I figured I could easily, use a ruler or a level like I did here to create those letters. So I'm trying to get them proportional to what I think the height's gonna be with the sign with the bunny ears that I'm going to add. And so I went through, created my H, and then figured out approximately how tall I wanted it to be so that my H and my P would be the same height. Also, if you have a Cricut, you could do that as well. I just figured it was a lot easier to just quickly freehand this. So I did part of my P the same way, and then I just ended up actually using my sign to create the curved part of the P. Then I used both a rotary cutter and my Arteza hobby knife to cut out my letters. Once the letters were done, I decided to complete my little bunny. So I used some more foam board and cut out ears similar to the process that I did with those little napkin rings, but I made them bigger so they were proportionate to the sign. And then I followed the same process by covering it in the burlap so that they looked similar in my decor. For these, I only covered the one side with the burlap because you aren't going to see the back of the sign, but you could absolutely cover both sides if you want to. Then it was time to paint the sign, so I gave it 2 coats of Waverly chalk paint, both sides, as well as the curve across the top. Then I distressed with a little bit of sandpaper because the inspo look had more of a rustic edge to it, and I think it gives the circle more dimension. Then to finish off the bunny, you need your ears and your tail, so the ears were just an easy glue on. And then for the tail, I made my own pom-pom. So to do this, I took 4 fingers and wrapped yarn from Dollar Tree around it 100 times. Now that seems like a lot, but it's going to give you a full fluffy tail. So once you wrap it around that 100 times, I slid it off my hand and I had a little piece of yarn waiting so that I could tie that around the center and hook everything together. So as you can see, you're going right around that puff of yarn. I usually do a double or triple knot just to make sure everything's in there. And then to create that actual pom-pom look, you take scissors and insert them into the little loops that were created by wrapping it around your hand and cut them. So then that way you will have your pom-pom look. You could absolutely use a pom-pom maker if you have that on hand. I just don't, so I decided to make it with what I had, which were my hands. Last step here is to fold everything kind of over and see what it's going to look like when you glue it on the sign, and then give your pom-pom a little bit of a haircut, add some hot glue, and stick it on, and you've got a cute little bunny tush. Now for the letters, I said that I went in a different direction, and I actually loved this fabric that I picked up at Walmart recently. It was just a fat quarter, and I decided that I wanted to do this floral on there instead of buffalo check because I have a lot of buffalo check, and so I figured I'd try something different. So I'm going to decoupage my foam core letters. So I just took some Mod Podge, started in the center, and put my piece of fabric on there. I'm smoothing it out with my fingers, and I'm also stretching it. If you do stretch it and push it down, it's going to get rid of any wrinkles that you have, so you don't have to worry about pressing it or anything. You're not going to have a wrinkle on your sign if you pull it taut. I use my Cricut tool here, but you could also use a gift card, just something flat to push out any bubbles and get it to stick down. So then once you're stuck on the front, then you're going to want to cut some slits, so then that way you can essentially wrap your letter like a present. So I'm cutting both slits for the top and bottom of the H, but then I'm cutting 45-degree angles toward each corner, and that's going to allow you to wrap it all around and not have any weird like gapping or bubbles. And then on the back, if anything doesn't look like it's sticking down, add some more Mod Podge. So to assemble my sign, I needed some sort of base. I had 2 Dollar Tree rulers that I had already stained, so those I just glued together. I laid out my signs and then added some hot glue to stick my letters and my little bunny to the wood. Then I wanted to make sure my letters weren't going to fall over, so I just cut some more of those little Dollar Tree dowel rods into the right length. I cut one into thirds, and I glued it behind each letter so it gave it a little bit more of like a kickstand to stand up. And that's it. Overall, it's a pretty simple process. This process can be used to spell out anything. You could also do this for non-Easter. You could spell out your last name, your kid's name. It would be cute for birthday parties. There are a ton of different options, but I really love that I went with the floral fabric. It is so cute. So for this one, the starting point was $12.99. My variation with Dollar Tree supplies came in around $7. Now, how many times have you seen some lamb's ear type arrangement somewhere, maybe Kirkland's, other places, for so much money? So I'm going to show you how you can dupe this super easy. So I'm using a hurricane, some wreaths I got from the Target dollar spot that were just collecting dust in my basement, some Dollar Tree Easter eggs, and a candle. So the first thing I did to give a full wreath is I attached 2 of my dollar spot wreaths. Now you could get these at Hobby Lobby for about the same price, but the 2 of those together were $6. They were 3 each. And then I inserted my little vase from Dollar Tree, and then I added some hot glue to these eggs, added my candle, and voila! It matches my decor really well. It was so easy to put together, and I really like the speckled eggs that Dollar Tree has this year. If you can't find these at Dollar Tree, Walmart also has a 12-pack of similar eggs for $1.98. So it's the same price essentially. You're just getting basically 2 packs for $2 instead of 1 pack for $1. The candle was something I had on hand too. Honestly, if you have Farmhouse decor, you probably have some of this stuff just sitting around. So this one came in at under 1/3 of the price, and a huge chunk of that was even the 2 Target dollar spot wreaths. So if you can make it for cheaper, it's going to be even cheaper. And finally, this cute little bunny pillow. I've been loving bunnies with glasses. Actually, recently I did a reverse canvas in a previous video with these cute little purple glasses. And so I decided to use the same cut file to create a dupe of that other pillow. So we're going to use both heat transfer vinyl and some Cricut Infusible Ink. So the first thing you've got to do is create your file in Cricut. So you're going to go over to upload, and this is available on Etsy. So I will include the link down below. This is not one that I can provide for free because I did not design it. So first step is to get it to the size that you want. So I decided that I wanted to be 10.5 tall. And then I started going through and figuring out which pieces were absolutely necessary. Because this is a hand-drawn item, you don't need every little speck in there, so you can test that out by clicking the items. You can click the little eyeball to the right. That will show you what it looks like with or without it. And I removed a lot of the small little pieces that I didn't think were super necessary that'll help with weeding later on. Then I went over to images and searched for glasses. I found a pair that I liked and I changed them to purple just so the machine knew that I was going to cut them out in a different material. Then I grabbed a bow tie, changed the color, and then got that all kind of manually put where I wanted it to go. Once you're all good with your sizing, then you're going to click Make It up in the right-hand corner and follow all the prompts. Now, the big thing here is that you're going to want to make sure that this mirror option to the left is turned on, because when you use heat transfer vinyl or infusible ink, everything goes on backwards. So you want to make sure you cut it backwards, so 2 backwards make a forward, essentially, if that makes sense. You're also going to want to make sure that your machine is set to infusible ink. If you can't find it when you turn your dial to custom, you can select this option in the upper right. So then once everything's ready to go on your computer, you're going to grab your infusible ink. And this was scary to me when I first started, but I want to share more projects with you guys because I've gotten comments that once you see me do it, it hasn't been as scary as you thought it was. And let me tell you, that's so true. It's really nice because the infusible ink infuses into the fabric, and so you're not going to have something that's sitting on top of your fabric. So you will with the heat transfer vinyl, but not with this. So the same process goes here for heat transfer vinyl as it does for infusible ink. You put your shiny side down and you're going to cut it mirrored. The difference here really is that the ink is on like what feels like a cardstock, and so it looks a little bit different. So here you can see this looks like heat transfer vinyl, which it is. And this is a lot easier to weed. You can just go through really, you don't have to be too nice to it because it's stretchy. It's a lot easier to weed. Some brands are called Easy Weed Heat Transfer Vinyl. But with this one, it's a little bit more like cardstock, like I mentioned. So you're going to want to be more careful. You're not going to want to rip it off like a Band-Aid. You're going to want to take your time and make sure, especially like those little whiskers don't get pulled off. But if you do, it's totally worth it. It makes your stuff look a lot more high-end because you're able to let it, like I said, kind of you guys know, I cannot say that word, but it's where the ink kind of infuses, that's a better word for me to say, into the fabric. So once that's all weeded, then I'm using my Cricut Easy Press 2, but you could definitely use an iron. I just like this because it's got a bigger surface, but I've used an iron for years with stuff like this. If you use your Easy Press, you're going to do $3.95 for 40 seconds for the infusible ink. If you use your iron, just make sure you check your settings to get up to that high heat. The other 2 things you're going to want to have on hand are butcher paper, which comes with your infusible ink, so you don't have to buy that separate. And then also, this is optional, but I love Cricut's heat resistant tape. So I'm putting this on a piece of burlap that I had from a prior collab with burlapfabric.com ages ago. I will link it down below if I can still find it, but this was actually a pillow that I made and I ended up taking it apart because I wasn't using it. So I wanted to repurpose the material. So I'm sticking down my decal, the black down, as you can see the white is now up, and I'm putting my tape down. PSA, do not use Scotch tape. You do want heat resistant tape. If not, it's gonna like hot glue right to your thing. It's gonna be terrible. You're gonna ruin it. So if you're gonna use tape, make sure it's heat resistant tape. Then I had to press my infusible ink twice just because the piece is bigger than my easy press, which is fine. That tape makes it so stuff doesn't move around. So then we're gonna add both our glasses and our bow tie where we want it, press it for 15 to 20 seconds at 330, peel it off. It's a good day. So then the last step is to assemble your pillow. And so I just took some fabric glue in my glue gun, and you could also use regular hot glue. I just had some fabric, but you don't have to like go out and buy that. You could definitely use regular hot glue. I've done that for years. And so you're gonna want to glue the outside except for a little hole in the bottom still so that you could stuff it. So you wanna make sure your hand can fit through. And then I just used the same stuffing that I had in this pillow originally, but you could use stuffing from an old pillow. You can get a pillow from Walmart, one of those couple buck pillows. You can do whatever you want to stuff it with. You can make a pillow cover, all the things. Then I took my hot glue and finished off my pillow, and I love this. I really loved that canvas that I made in a prior video, and so that was definitely part of the inspiration for this. Bunnies with glasses. I know this isn't the first year they've been around, but like I just love them this year for some reason. Price check for this one, theirs was $19.99. This one for about $10-ish. I created this one. I had to extrapolate out all of the different pieces. All I know is for sure it was cheaper than theirs, and I got something that matched my decor that I already had in place. I'm so happy with all of these projects and how they turned out. I love the overall aesthetic at Kirkland's. I could honestly buy everything in that store, but my bank account would not thank me for that. So I'm super thankful that I can recreate a lot of the looks and the vibes for a lot cheaper. Let me know down in the comments your favorite project we did today. Be sure to hit subscribe if you haven't done so already so you don't miss a future Whiskey and Whit video, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye! Really, guys? That's okay. It's cuter that you're in it.